Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Old Man Rambles. If I can remember what I'm talking about today. Recently, our youngest stayed with us for a month. They had an opportunity to do a long-term substitute position, which they took advantage of locally. So they, stayed here. We weren't going to make them pay rent or anything, but and I've always said that I love having my kids home, and this is 100% true. I really loved having them here for a month. I was kind of not amazed, but surprised at how quickly we went back into our old patterns of behavior to a certain degree. But after having them stay here for a month, I realized a couple of things. First of all, my wife and I have been basically empty nesters for quite a while. Youngest went off to college in the fall of 2018, but they didn't move out fully until 2021, I think, that was the year they didn't come home from college. They had rented an apartment with their partner and some classmates near the college, and we've been 100% empty nesters since then, since 2021. So, and my wife and I have kind of carved out our own existence without our children. I've always, been somewhat annoyed at that. I, was heartbroken when my kids moved out, both of them. I much prefer to have them here, but we have grown accustomed to not having them here. It's one of those unpleasant realities of life that you learn to live with. But having, another person living here for a month after not having anyone here for over 5 years, where we've gotten accustomed to this, it was a little uncomfortable. It's not necessarily the right word, but it's probably the best word I can think of in the short term. And not just that, but our kids, both of them, have outgrown us. They've spent the last year since they moved out creating a life for themselves in their own space. This house has grown too small for them. It was different when they lived here full time, and they were basically, their whole life was in their bedroom with whatever spilled out in the rest of the house. But the house has grown too small to contain more than 2 adults living here full time. I realize that's odd with a 3-bedroom house, but especially with it being temporary, we didn't feel the need to make any major adjustments. We didn't have to really, we weren't going to rearrange our, everything just to have them live here for a month. The way we would have if it was a permanent thing. But even if it was, the house has grown too small. Or another way of putting it is that their lives have grown too large to live in this space as well. They, like I said, they've gotten used to having a larger space to live in. They've, the apartment that my youngest shares with their partner is, a modest 3-bedroom apartment. Well, I say modest, it's kind of a piece of crap, but it's what they can afford. And, they have their own kitchen, their own bedroom, their own living room, their own washer and dryer. They have all their own space to do whatever they want with. And, my oldest and her husband have bought their own home. They've got, a 2,000 square foot house to live in, and their own dining room, living room, all that stuff. Their lives have grown beyond, what we could fit in here. As much as I would love to have all of my children, I include their partners in this. I would love to have them all live here with us, but it's just not possible. There's not enough room left to to accommodate their lives in this small space anymore. So it was a bit eye-opening, to realize that as much as I would love it for them all to move back in here, it just wouldn't work. I mean, if it was necessary, if they needed the place to stay, obviously we would do whatever was necessary. But yeah, there's just not enough square footage anymore. So as much as I would love to have them here, it really couldn't be done unless we built a bigger house. We would need to build a bigger house if they did move back in. I would be all on board with that if the money were available. If we could all somehow pool all our money and build a massive house for all 6 of us to live in. I would love that. But right now at this moment, it's not a thing. More's the pity. Good hunting.